what's the one thing that you will want people to remember you for?
That I won more than I lost, and that that I was authentic. So again, the teal suits, this is not an accident that I'm wearing teal. And I have full teal suits. I have a whole bunch of different things. Even I have a teal bat back there. That's what it is be authentic. Be who you are, because I don't regret. I might regret that things didn't work out at certain parts of my life, or I've made mistakes. I don't regret that I didn't get to spend the time with you today, and thank you for that. I didn't waste my time.
Thank you too.
I was here 100% present, 100% authentic. I'm not going to go home in the car ride home and be like, oh, I should have said that. I should have done that. I know every question. I was fully present. Those are the two things I want everybody to think about. Be fully present where you are, whatever you're doing, like those fish guys in Seattle, but also be authentic. Be who you are, because that's what the bat is about, not violence. It's about being authentic today.
Welcome back to another episode of the Storytelling CEO, where we sit down with extraordinary people who are using the power of storytelling to transform businesses, inspire lives, and create lasting impact. Today's guest is someone whose journey is a powerful reminder that our greatest challenges can often become our greatest purpose. David Chametzky is a speaker, an entrepreneur, an executive trainer, a podcast host, and a transformational storyteller with more than 30 years of corporate leadership experience. Throughout his career, he has combined leadership, intellectual property management, executive strategy, and mental wellness into a message centered on resilience, authenticity, leadership under pressure, and living a life with purpose. He is also the creator and the host of the internationally ranked podcast called Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat, where he has honest conversations about leadership, mental health, personal growth, and the stories that shape who we become. David has openly shared his own experiences with adversity and transformation, using storytelling as a bridge to help others find hope, healing, and direction. Today, we're going beyond just titles and accomplishments. We'll be deep diving and we'll be talking about resilience, about leadership, happiness, overcoming limitations, navigating the corporate world, creating meaningful content, and ultimately, how each of us can write a better story for our lives. So now, please, I would like you all to join me in welcoming on our platform, David Chametzky. David, welcome once again. Now, for those people who don't know you, who is David Chametzky?
I'm a guy, just a regular guy who grew up in Brooklyn. I was born on an Air Force base, and what I do now is, I had a 30-year career, as you mentioned in the intro, so thank you. Now I help people get their story out, align their brand and their story, because we all have a story, and I've learned that over the years. The story is really where everything comes from. You learn from your stories. It's not just I have a story, something happened to me. It's what you learned, how to overcome those things. That resiliency that the stories come to us. And that comes when you have a job or when you don't have a job. It's part of life, that resiliency is knowing what you can learn from the things that we experienced.
So what was your experience like growing up in Brooklyn? What was your childhood experience like? And how has those experiences shaped you into becoming the leader that you are?
Most of it was good. I don't, want to knock it. Man, I still love Brooklyn. I talk about, when I do some public speaking, I talk about Brooklyn and the special place that Brooklyn is. And if you've not been there, come. There's plenty of places to enjoy. But, it also taught me some things that were not so good. My parents, while they did the best they could, my dad brought some violence into the house, yelling and punching walls and things like that. And that's how I learned. So we model our parents. Part of my story is overcoming some of those things.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that I didn't know I needed to. I was just like, okay, I figured that's what everybody's house was. Everybody, my friends' houses were similar. There was yelling, there was different conversations. And I thought that's what everybody does. So I didn't think anything was weird of it. And you learn those things. And to break those patterns is so hard. It's a story you tell yourself. I can't break it. That's how it all came down. My grandfather was like this. My grandmother was... You can break any pattern you want. And I've learned those things.
Sure, I definitely agree with that. Like you said, we model our parents.
Mm-hmm.
And when we see all those things, it's almost like, because it's not just something that's happening in a week or a couple of days.
Right.
You see for years, and then you think, oh, maybe that's the normal way to treat people.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's really good. So how did that shape into becoming the leader? And what was like your first step into your leadership role, or maybe your first step into the corporate environment?
Yeah, so one of the things that it taught me, again, it was mostly good. It taught me how to work hard. They were blue collar people. My dad worked for the Postal Service. He was in accounting on that end, and my mom was a teacher. They worked hard to get their bachelor's degrees to move up the family. We weren't a wealthy family by any stretch, but they were able to do so. To help me manage, looking at it now, when you're living as a kid, oh, I want all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But looking at it now and being a parent myself, you really learn those things. So, they taught me hard work. I mean, any job I've ever had, nobody's ever said Dave's a slacker.
Mm-hmm.
So I've learned that from my parents and my grandparents. Those are among the things that I learned back in the days of Brooklyn, that I take with me today. We carry, I put out a post actually around Father's Day.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't forget the faces of our father.
Exactly.
And really what that means is not just you don't know what he looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It's who they are and respect them. Even with the challenges my dad brought to me, I made sure that I found grace within that to give him grace at the end. And I try to give him grace now. I joke around. I mean, he's passed, and I go, he's a lot smarter now than he was when he was alive.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of us as parents, we might teach the right lessons, but the way we do it, I wish his methods were different. I tell him that all the time. If your methods were different, I might have been that. And that's goes back to storytelling or even corporate work. Not everybody does the same thing. You and I, while there's a lot of similarities,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you work. I mean, you were telling me yesterday about you recording movies and things like that.
Yeah,
So you know about the detail.
Yeah.
I'm not always the greatest detail person. I get the big picture, and then I need somebody like you to help me with the detail. When you're leading in corporate America or anywhere, you have to make sure you build the right team.
Exactly.
And by putting the right team together, that's where we learn a little bit more about ourselves and about leadership as a whole.
Exactly, that's true. So great response. I appreciate that. I appreciate the response.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate your insight and how it's been able to help you grow as a person. But we're talking about spending 30 years in corporate leadership. It's not just anything. Like, I know people who have done like few years, they're like, okay, the corporate world is not for me. And also dealing with people. Like, what has 30 years of experience in corporate leadership? What's the lesson you've learned about people?
Well, one of the things I learned, at the beginning, when I first got into corporate America, I wasn't a leader. While I could lead small teams, that wasn't it. One of the things that I did learn is finding the right mentors, finding the right people, get the right information. And that goes for life in corporate America and as well as out of corporate America. Mm-hmm. Ask the right questions. When you were able to do that, then we're able to do so much more. So that's one of the lessons I learned. Don't be afraid. Be your authentic self. People love you. So again, like I said, when you asked me earlier, I said, nobody in my job, not everybody liked me, but guess what? Everybody knew that if I was on the job, the work was going to get done. The work was going to get done the right way, and there's a work ethic. Mm-hmm. So part of that is leadership also.
Yeah.
Is knowing when you're going to be, you don't know the answers, and make sure you get those answers, or maybe somebody realizing some of your team. So that's among the things I learned that. I mean, there was one trial I was on when I was working at a law firm, and one of the things, I ran a trial team. So it was a team of probably about 35 people, and lots of moving parts. And at night, I was responsible to order dinner. And one night, the dinner got late because I was busy with other tasks. And I got yelled at by one of the partners at the firm. And in the room, she's trying to make me feel bad. And I go, well, you got the paralegal who knows how to run the team. I go, you didn't get the one who orders the best. And I said, tomorrow will be different, because then I knew I had to delegate it. And that's also one of those things that you learn in corporate America or anywhere, what you could delegate, even in your own life. If you have a partner in your life, you don't have to do everything. If depending on the relationship of the part, right? So you might be doing laundry and they do dishes, or vice versa. You delegate and you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to finish a task.
Yeah.
And that's the important part, is the delegation and knowing it. So that's one of the things I definitely learned. And always, again, in so much of this translates into what we are as human beings, knowing your resources. So I, learned my resources. Like the first day I started at law firm, they said, hey, do you know how to redact? I go, I don't. It was a word I didn't know. I wasn't familiar with what it was. It was my first day as being a paralegal. And then I said, what is it? They showed me, and I was like, oh, that's easy. You used a fancy word for an easy topic.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Now that I know what that is, no problem. Easy peasy. And that's what we have to do, is sometimes break down the more complicated into something very simple and teach the people in the language they need to hear. That's another thing on leadership. It's not just communicating a problem. Make sure that they're hearing exactly what you need.
Yeah. So that's like communication on both ends. You need to be able to
Sure.
communicate what you need. If you need help, be able to communicate.
Yeah.
And if you don't do the job the way that they want it, you should learn from it and just improve the next time.
100%. And ask the right questions.
Ask the right
So that
questions.
again, when they asked me, do you know how to redact? I said no, because I didn't know what that word was. And then they showed me. I was like, oh, okay. That's, you can use a bunch of different words for it.
Yeah.
And having that confidence in yourself, like, hey, I don't want to mess up. This is my first day. I don't want to end my job quicker. And then I was fine. And that's how you build trust. I trusted the person wasn't going to just make fun of me. Oh, you don't know how to do it, And those are the things. And whenever I brought in new team players, I'm always like, ask me as many questions as you want. Because if I don't explain it properly, or sometimes we get so, when you become an expert, right? I'm sure, like filmmaking. If you told me how to filmmake, there would be things that you might miss. Not because you don't know it, it's because you know it so well that you think everybody knows that knowledge. I know when I did photography, the little stands and things like that, how you see things, you might not recognize as part of your talent set. But somebody who doesn't know, they get nervous.
Yeah. I see that a lot too. Yeah, because you would it's easy to project on people sometimes and think, well, maybe, well, I told you yesterday, well, you should know it today, and sometimes maybe they have it on their resume that they could do it.
Yeah.
But then when you bring them in, the way you do things might be different, or maybe things has improved, so you still have to train them.
100%.
And also, if you're like the one managing them, some people might feel like them asking might be like, maybe they don't know what they're doing, so they don't want to feel like, oh, I don't want to look like I'm incapable of doing the job.
It's tough, but that's where when you have your confidence, when you know who you are. Again, I wasn't perfect in all 30 years or 30 plus years. I admitted when the part of that is learning, is confidence, is knowing the things I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm willing to learn and I'm willing to modify. So when I don't know something and I made a mistake, I don't want to keep making the same mistake.
Exactly.
So I learn from it and I ask the questions, what could I have done differently? And those are powerful parts.
Yeah. So do you think, like, in for example, like in the business, after spending like decades in the business, Do you think there's a point where you could confidently say, I think I know so much now? Or you think like learning is just continuous, you just keep learning because business, everything changes all the time?
Yeah, well, I think learning is continuous because I think there's new ways. I mean, again, when I started 30 years ago, there was no discussions of AI or even some of the technology.
Yeah, that's a new thing now.
I mean, really, when even the the old Blackberries, right? So when we first got the old Blackberries, was a lot into my career. I was about 10 years into my career. So that was even a new experience, and now we don't even think about.
It's crazy.
Right?
Like I was just thinking about it, and it's like it's just completely obsolete.
Yeah. So BlackBerry, right? You have your phone. It doesn't matter which brand you have. You can connect. So a lot of this is you're gonna grow in your life. So no matter what you are, where you are now, it's gonna be grow, and you have to. If you want to be a really good leader, you're gonna keep growing.
So do you think? Because I feel like maybe it's something we don't talk about a lot, or something that we don't hear people talk about, is like if you're navigating the corporate world. And I think some people also say something like, okay, for you to stay in the corporate world for so long, it's almost like a dog-eat-dog world.
Sure.
Because I've seen something like this. So for example, like I've seen videos of like in the military world, they foster like unity and this and this and this. But in like the corporate world, it's almost like different there.
They're very similar. So I've worked with people in the military as well. I think it all depends on the situation. Not every situation is the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes it depends on the team and the company. Some companies are better, are really people-centric, employee-centric. Some companies are just, hey, you work for me, you get to do whatever I say.
Yeah.
So it all depends on what type of company, and that's where it could be. I mean, depending on what growth is, the higher on the food chain you go, so you get into the C-suite. It's a dog eat dog. It is a dog eat dog.
So we're talking
world.
about people now, but my question now would be, what do you think makes people thrive in a corporate environment, and what makes the company also thrive?
Well, part of it is culture. So, like on a company level, if you don't have the right culture, that's not going to happen. It doesn't. It makes it more difficult to grow and things like that. Yeah. So the culture will definitely take you to a completely different level. Because if I'm afraid to make a mistake because my boss is going to yell at me or my job's at risk, I'm going to act differently. I'm afraid. I don't want to lose my job just for a silly mistake and get yelled at. Who wants to be yelled at? And in the same token for people, it is. When I was talking about getting, you could be friends with everybody in corporate America, but there's people who look. They want to get ahead, and if somebody else wants to get ahead, guess what? They're going to try to not necessarily push you, but they're going to not necessarily allow you to look as well as you could. And that's the challenge, right? So that's that dog-eat-dog world, is that some people are going to be like, oh man, Dave's not that guy. Look at the error he made and things like that. Whereas everything else is like, okay, well, Dave made a mistake. Why did he make the mistake? That's a different type of culture. It's a supportive culture. And that's what we have to do, is just figure out. And not every job is going to be right for you. You've worked in a few places at this point. And some places work, you feel better, you feel like home, and other places you don't. And
you just want to survive in that environment. And I think it depends on the team.
Yep.
Yeah, it's because it comes from corporates, and to me, I feel like environments like that kills creativity.
100%. If you work from a place of fear, same thing with entrepreneurism and things like that. If you work from a place of fear, it makes it that much tougher to get ahead. When you can remove the fears, or at least identify them and figure out how to address them, then there's the power right there, is being able to understand it, move through it, and then learn from it.
I like what you said earlier when you said you can ask me any question, and if you make a mistake, that's fine. We'll find a way around it to make sure you don't like keep dwelling on that mistake.
Yeah, and I mean, if you keep making the same mistake, then we have to have different conversations, right? And it doesn't have to be you have to learn it the first time. Depends on how complicated so again, when we go back to that redacting on my first day, that was a very simple task. It was they gave me the ground rules, what I had to do. All right, that's easy. So I shouldn't mess it up.
Yeah.
Could there have been a mess up along the way? Yeah, sometimes that happens. We're human, and that's also part of that culture. How do we see other people's mistakes as a culture? Is, oh man, you made a mistake. How could you do that? Or is it, why did you make that mistake? Or why did you think that way? So we can see this. It might not have been a mistake from your vision. It just wasn't the way we wanted to approach that challenge.
Yeah, that's really impressive. I like that because I think that kind of mindset can help the team to just help the whole corporate culture improve in the long run. If they think, okay, well, we have a supportive environment.
Yeah, that's why culture, and when I work with executives, I train them how to reduce the stress or see some of the limitations, what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
That's what's really important, is to recognize what we're doing as part of the challenge or problem, and are we communicating it right? And when we move things along the way, that's where we learn, and being able to how to handle the stresses differently. So when you talk about, in today's world, we're not getting any less stress. We just got to learn how to manage it a lot better.
All right, thank you so much for that response, David. One more thing that I think you listed as one of your specialties is leadership under pressure.
Sure.
So my question is, what's the thing that distinguishes average leaders from effective leaders when it comes to managing pressure, maybe both on themselves and maybe also on their team? What do you think distinguishes them?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think with managing stress, again, we're not getting any less stressed in the world. Work is not going to be any less pressure. But how to manage that and really figure out the best ways to reduce stress, but also to not put on the stress on our team. So if we're a really good leader, our teams will know that they can come to us. Our teams will know that they're not in a stressful situation. How to manage that, right? So there's going to be deadlines. I'm not saying don't have deadlines. We're going to have deadlines. We're going to have so much involved. But when we're able to do that in a less stressful way, I've learned some techniques that I've been able to instill in others. And when you can learn that, it's like how I explain it. Have you ever watched a horror movie or recorded it, right? If you watch a horror movie in the dark, it's scary.
Yeah.
And then when you turn the lights on, watching that same horror movie,
Different effects.
different feel. And that's what I want people to live. I don't care, you can watch as many horror movies as you want. That's an entertainment. But when you're working in life and in corporate America or any parts of your own life, I don't want you to have that scary, dark house, scary feeling. I want you to make sure that the lights are on in your response systems. It helps us healthy. It creates healthier lives. There's a lot of, call it like little biohacking, right? In terms of having the ability to self-regulate becomes so powerful. And I love when I get to train people how to do that, because that takes you to another level. Is when you can be there when everybody's crazy about you, right? There's the famous football story of Joe Montana during one of the Super Bowls. And they were down to the end of the game, and he had to drive the team for winning touchdown, or they would lose. And all of a sudden, everybody's in the huddle, and he goes, "Hey, isn't that John Candy, the comedian, in the stands?" Now, he should have been paying attention to that, but everybody then took their focus off the pressure. And then they were like, "Oh yeah, John Candy's here, great, no problem." And then they played, and they won for that famous drive with John Taylor catching it. So, that's the idea of a good leader, is being able to reduce the stress. That doesn't mean that they don't feel it, but it's how you carry it.
Yeah, it's not like they feel it, but it's not that they don't feel it, but it's more importantly how they carry it and make people want to do the work without feeling pressure to do the work. Because there will always be deadline, like you mentioned, there will always be deadline, but then we don't want people to always feel like, oh my goodness, this, to the point where you can't really separate, almost like your work-life, but you don't have a work-life balance.
Well, and it's also learning how to balance it, right? So you wouldn't carry the same sort of pressures, and if you can not have to hold on to it, I always go, how is it holding on? How are you holding on? So even fear, what are you fearful of? Understanding what you're fearful of takes you differently. So, are you fearful of making a decision because lots of lives are at risk? A company might have to get sold or things like that. Or are you fearful because somebody's going to yell at you, right? Different type of scenarios. And then because when you acknowledge what you're fearful of, because fear is just another energy. Sometimes we're just fearful. Like, I don't know how much public speaking you do. I always talk to people when I train them about public speaking. They're like, I get afraid when I get up on stage. I go, no. You get excited. How you turn it into is fear. Now, when I go up, a lot of people go, I see you jumping a little bit. I'm like, yeah, it's get ready energy. How do we move that energy? Same thing. How do we turn that fear energy into something that's more positive? This fear, it's easy to fear. It's easy to give up. I've done that in my life. But it's not so easy to figure out the solutions. Work a little harder, but getting through those things. When you win or when you're finished filming a movie, how hard was it going through it? But when you have the finished product, what does that feel like? Right? Your book. What does it feel like? How hard was that? 100%.
Yeah.
But you turn that fear of, no, what's people going to think, to, I don't care. You took that power, took your own power, and then took it to that next level.
Yeah. But how were you able to break through to that point where it's almost like you don't even feel the fear, like you just turn the energy?
Well, it's understanding where that fear is. That's where you have somebody like me, when I work with executives and speakers, where are you feeling it? Because if you understand where you're feeling it, even on your body, like for me, I carry a lot of my stress on my shoulders. Some people carry it in their belly. And when you can know it, then you can move through some of that energy. I know it sounds a little woo-woo.
But the things I've heard it before, not the belly part, but I've heard that people carry stress on their shoulder before.
Yeah, it's one of the most popular places, right? Right. Even our catchphrases, right? Carries the world on his shoulders. Hercules and all of that. We do. It's where we hold on it, and depending on what we want to do, that's how we can move the energy differently.
Yeah.
What do you do? I know when my shoulders are hurting, a lot of times I'll go to acupuncture. I know how to reduce stress a bunch of different ways. Acupuncture is one of those ways that I really enjoy because it reminds me I'm all about energy. Where is my energy kind of stuck at that moment?
So what's the lesson that you think there's a young professional that's stepping into the corporate world? What's the lesson that you will think or you would wish that they know before they step into the world?
Well, I'm hoping that more young professionals get to know each other better. Get to know themselves. You have to start with yourself. When you don't start with yourself, then you're looking for outside influences to tell you what you're worth. I know what I'm worth, and but how do you do that? How do you communicate that?
Yeah.
And that's part of the knowledge is by asking the questions. What do you see when you talk to Dave? And then I could be like, oh, why do you see that? Right? We can ask those questions. Doesn't mean that you're wrong, but if there's a way that I'm behaving that makes you think differently than the way I want to be seen, then I need to address that and figure it out. And the same thing is if you're not seeing it because you're looking at your own views, right? That's part of the challenge as humans in leadership, is that we each come in with a different set of experiences.
Yeah. And you said something about, be authentic, be yourself.
Yep. I'm all about that.
Yeah. Now, I want us to be very practical about that now, right? So let's say there's a young professional going for a job interview and we tell them to be authentic and be themselves. If they get to the job interview, how do you present yourself in the most authentic way and overcome all the barriers and eventually get the job that you're trying to get?
Great question. Really what it is know who you are. It's that self-awareness is important because you wouldn't walk into a job in a t-shirt and jeans if you're looking for a corporate job, right? You got to dress to where you want to be. You got to be where you want. Now, if you want a job at a retail store, yeah, that might be an appropriate dress. But if you want to come to corporate America, you're going to need to have suit and tie or at least a sports jacket. And how are you going to talk? That doesn't mean you need to speak exactly how other people speak, but you need to have respect. Right? When you walk into corporate America, you can't just be like, yeah, what? Right? That wouldn't be just using that as an example. So you need to prepare yourself, know who you are. And so many people, and I'm going to push back to all those people who say, corporate America, I couldn't work corporate America. No, you just don't even want to try, is what I would say. Because my corporate America career, I hardly ever sat at a desk. And when I did sit at a desk, I did a million different things. It wasn't just one thing. All those people like, oh, I can't sit at a desk 9 to 5. Nobody sits at it. Very few people, unless you're a receptionist, very few people are sitting at a desk 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are. You're doing things. You're getting up. You're making a copy. You're thinking. Everybody can do it. It's what you do, and maybe it isn't right for everybody. Some people need to be outside. They like working with their hands. So again, knowing yourself, knowing that if you want to be somebody who works with their hands, then corporate America could be part of the things that you like. That could be part of a hobby versus something that you want to do, and it depends on what you want to do. That's why it all has to come from the authenticity of knowing yourself. It's not just being authentic, just like, oh, you got to dress up to what they want me to be. No, I was always who I was. And in fact, at the end of my career, I saw I didn't necessarily belong 100% there. Obviously, I could put it up, I had the skill set, but I knew where my heart was. Follow your heart.
Yeah, that's really good. So let's go into storytelling and how storytelling, because you believe storytelling can help us find our purpose.
Sure.
So why do you, first question would be, do you think storytelling and advice are like two different things? And which one do you think is more powerful? Just using storytelling or maybe providing someone with an advice?
They're both different. So sometimes it also depends on what the person wants. So whatever you want to give, you can give, but that doesn't mean somebody wants it. And that's the challenge. Oh, I got this great book out there and nobody's, or I got a podcast and nobody's listening to it. All right, but you haven't found the right place. Or maybe you're not saying the right things. And that's the really knowing what your story is or your purpose is. So it goes back to that purpose that you mentioned. So if you're looking for just giving advice, are you doing that in a place that you're able to do that? Are you looking at an audience to give advice? Or are you looking at people who want advice? Now, if you're working at, in school, all these kids might want advice. Some of them might not, but that's where storytelling comes in. There's a lot of different ways to do storytelling. And storytelling doesn't mean once upon a time start and happily lived after at the end. There's a story. You take them on a journey. And depending on what words you do, what words you use, that becomes so much powerful. I'll give you an example. An example is like anybody who wants to reduce weight. Now, I know a lot of people like, I want to lose some weight. Like, no, you don't. Nobody wants to lose weight. You use the right words. So when you use the right words in a story, you don't want to lose weight because what happens is your mind then goes, okay, I have to find it, right? What happens when you lose your car keys? I'm going to go find it. Same thing with weight. When you reduce weight, eliminate weight, you train yourself. So it depends on the story you want to tell yourself. And that's where you can stick in storytelling with the advice by just telling you a nice little story like that.
Almost like you infuse the story into what you're doing, and then the way you relate with it now provides you with, how you go about it.
Yeah, one of the most famous guys in the world, I spoke at one of his conferences, the Milton Erickson Brief Therapy Conference. And Milton Erickson, you can look, he's like one of the fathers of psychoanalysts and stuff like that, hypnosis. He used to storytell. And he would, he'd come to you and he'd hear your story, the information you would give him, and then he would give you back a story. And I've done this before with clients where, somebody who wasn't strong, didn't feel strong, wasn't able to step into their lives in certain aspects. And then I told them a story about a tree with the seed that you plant. And then when you move forward and you water it, the tree gets stronger. And then it can withstand the winds. And then we tell that story with those words, and that person was able to walk away after telling themselves that new story, that they have already rebuilt their strength because of what they've accomplished. That's where you can blend the two. So by telling you sharing what challenges you're working through, then I could tell a story, come up with some stories. When I do some ghostwriting, I've sat with people and they're like, that's my life. How'd you see that in my life? I never recognized it. Sometimes we are the forest from the trees, right? There's a saying, you can't see the forest from the trees, is we're so close to a situation. And that's why teaching people how to slow down their way of thinking really helps a lot with healing, growing, and storytelling.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So I believe a lot of people, because we're talking about being your authentic self, and I think when people step into a place or maybe into a role, instead of being the authentic self, it's almost like they shape themselves to fit that new role. And then over time, the role becomes who they are. And then over time, it's almost like now they have a mask.
Well,
But how do they break out and start living authentically?
Well, if you start just doing the things that you're always doing, you can always change. So it might not always be a mask. But then that's the inauthentic part. And if you're doing everything authentically, so either by learning, right, as I told you, when I first got into corporate America, I didn't know certain things and I learned. So it wasn't that I became inauthentic, I just didn't know some things that I needed to learn. So we have to decide, what are we learning and how are we moving forward? Don't be who you're not. Again, when I told you at the end of my career, I knew I necessarily didn't belong there, right? The job, I could do the job. That wasn't a question. But the environment really didn't change. I changed. And it was a place that I was, when they gave me my golden handshake, when they said, we're reducing staff, and Dave, thank you very much, I was able to think my next steps out. I knew that it was okay. I didn't feel, I still want to be there. Yeah, I wanted the salary. That was really good, but I was okay with not being there because that's where I was. And, learning some of that is also knowing who I was. At that time, I was working, building a practice on executive coaching and writing. So I knew that I had other things. That's why being, again, our authentic self is knowing our job might be what we do. It's not who we are. I used to say that. I do a lot of jobs. I had a lot of things that I did in corporate America, and they're like, oh my God, that's a great story. You went here and there, and that must have been incredible. Yeah, it's not who I am. My job is not who I am. It's something I do, and I love what I did, and I love the company that I worked for. I'm honored to have been part of that job and the work that I did, but it's not who I was. And when I went home, I still was a daddy. I was a son. I was all those other things also that I brought along the way.
I mean, this is almost like it's almost like it's spilling into a topic that I didn't even plan. Almost like a topic on identity.
Yes, sir.
Knowing who you are. Because a lot of people, when they spend time doing the same thing, they almost start to be that thing. And the moment that thing is taken away from them, now they have like an identity crisis.
Well, what I'll also say to people, because a lot of people might not be in a job that they like, right? I'm going to tell you, there's a book called Fish Tales out there. I don't know if you've ever heard it.
No.
Fish Tales is mainly, the first book of it was about the guys who catch the fish in the Seattle fish market. If you've ever seen pictures of it, YouTube it, or if you live in that area, go watch them. Yeah, but watch. They're so happy catching fish, so they're going to smell like fish. That's what they do their whole, their career. But they're happy. They're talking to each other. They're enjoying each other. A lot of people be like, "Oh, I wouldn't want to do that." You go home, you smell fish. It's how we look at it. The idea of the book Fish Tales is how you take your job. When you can find satisfaction in doing your job, that's where you are. And that's where I was at even the end of my corporate career. I loved my job. I love the people I work with. Obviously there's always something you might not like about, but for the most part, I loved my job. I was pretty darn good at doing what I did. And, the level of expertise I got from it, that I received and learned, that's where the power is.
Yeah.
So it's no matter what situation, going back to that Fish Tales, no matter what situation you've gone through or you're working through right now, look for the silver lining. Don't look at all the negative. Look at what you can learn. Even if you don't like the position you're in right now, what can you get out of it? What can you learn how to do better at that job that'll then translate into something else?
Interesting. That's a very good way to look at things. That's a good way to look at life too. And
Yeah.
I think that's how you build this positive mindset, and you become also optimistic about things in general, about life, about just learning, making the best of what you have
100%.
right now, and then taking it to the next level. That's really good. Now I want us to talk about mental wellness. Okay, because
Yeah.
that's also something that I've seen you talk
Yeah.
about too.
It will kick us.
Yeah. So, what makes you find that topic interesting? And also, we have a lot of people who are like in the top successful position, like the top of their game, and they struggle with mental wellness. Why do you
100%.
think things like that happen?
Well, how it happens is because we don't recognize it. Our society, uses words. Again, we go back to words, crazy, and all those things. Oh, yeah, you can't do that. Rather than trying to address some of the mental wellness issues. Now, I didn't always. While I've been doing the coaching for a while and helping people, I knew the resources, and I wasn't always using my resources. Almost 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago, I attempted suicide. I was like, man, life's getting too hard. I wasn't using my resources. So like we talked about earlier, when you use your resources, you can carry things differently. I wasn't. Now I 100% carry my resources. I go to acupuncture. I never did that before. I do a lot more meditation. I know how to reduce the stress. My life still hasn't got any easier, but reducing the stress and figuring it out, there's some power right there. And today's 26, so 4 years ago, I went through a year that might break a lot of people. My best friend died unexpectedly. He was single. His mother was still alive. She had Alzheimer's. Needed somebody to take care of. I took care of her for 4 months. And then she passed away. And then at the end of the year, my own mom passed away. So so there's all these things, as well as having 2 teenage daughters and life and all these things that we manage. Now that doesn't make me special, but it taught me that after my suicide attempt, which was 6 years ago, that I was able to regain myself once I was using my resources. Now, have I still made mistakes? Sure. Have I, sometimes had where you get angry and frustrated? That's a mental wellness, right? If somebody cuts you off, you could be frustrated. Something that goes back to, are you frustrated or are you scared, right? Nobody wants to get into an accident. So there's all these little pieces of understanding it, and that's where I'm much stronger than I'd ever been. I was able to handle all my work environment. That's why after I came back, and I didn't really miss a day after my suicide attempt, I was still able to do my job. I did it a little slower because I knew I wasn't fully present. But I talked to my supervisor again. I had confidence in myself to be like, all right, now I got to face it. And that's where, from facing it, that's how I got to do my TEDx talk. I was like, when I was going through the act of suicide, I heard a voice that said, it's not your time, you have to go back and tell your story. So that's why I don't mind talking about it and figuring out how I can help other people not feel that way.
So the voice that you heard, was it like a familiar voice, or was it like
it wasn't. So I asked. It wasn't God. I don't want to go down that road. I mean, I can go down that road, but it wasn't. It was somebody who identified as a Grandpa Mike. I don't have a Grandpa Mike. I have a feeling. I believe in mediumship and stuff like that. So I found out who it is. But he told me. I thought I'd be successful. Even the moment that I was closing my eyes at that time, I was like, all right, I'm comfortable. There's a lot of people who like jump off a bridge and they're like, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. I was very comfortable in my decision of what I was doing.
Oh wow. Well, I'm really sorry that you have to go through something that deep, because that's a very tough thing to have to go through.
Yeah.
So you also talk about happiness. So how do you find happiness in the midst of like one of this intense situations that can break you, and then you're able to overcome it and then find happiness? Or maybe we should start with what's your concept of happiness and what's like one of the biggest misconceptions of happiness.
Well, happiness is in a location. We get to have it, it's in our pockets all the time. So you can turn, right, if you're upset and you're anything like a child, right? Child's crying, fell, banged their knee. Oh, here's a lollipop. Oh, okay, I'm happy now, right?
Exactly.
Right? So happiness could be an object, but then that's an external piece. And we all a lot of us chase after external pieces. I would say dive deeper into yourself, into your own thinking and what happiness is. And happiness is just I could be pleasant. You know, never understood, right? The monk on the mountain, right? The infamous monk on the mountain who just sits there and is happy. What do you need? Nothing. Are you happy? Yes. Now we might judge as an outsider saying, how can you be happy? He has nothing. But it's the inner peace. And that's where learning that for myself, I used to fear being by myself. Now I have no problems. It's all good. It's things that we learn because I've faced the scary things. Why wasn't I? I asked myself the questions and was prepared to answer the questions for myself. Once we learn that stuff, it becomes a secret power. Now people can still hurt me, don't get me wrong, but not to that level. I now know what I have to do. I acknowledge the days I don't feel good, and I acknowledge the days when I feel great. And it doesn't mean something good happened on those days that I feel great. Just sometimes you feel that way.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So happiness is in your pockets, and you being self-aware, and also just being self-sufficient. Identify, okay, when I'm happy, or maybe I don't even want to use the word happiness. I just knowing these things and just being able to turn it on and off and know when to regulate things.
Well, to know how to make happiness for yourself. I mean,
Yes,
here, so we have these books. Some of that is happiness. People are like, what do you do? I go, I write. I get into these worlds. I know that these are authored worlds that I jump into. You know, the stories that we tell. Right? There's two types of stories. There's a story that we tell ourselves. I can't. A lot of those things, those limitations, or I'm only good when I have X, Y, Z, right? We have a story we tell each other.
Yeah.
In the morning, I need coffee to wake me up. You don't need coffee to wake you up. I don't drink coffee at all. Right? I still get up.
I for my coffee.
But it's a story you tell yourself at some point. No, I need it. Okay.
That's really true. That actually happened to me because I used to be a heavy coffee drinker at some point. And at some point I was like, I can't do without coffee. Over time, I realized, okay, I need to stop drinking coffee as much as I used to, because that was during my student days. So before every class, before every lecture, before going, because I was also working overnight before going to class. So I was like, I need coffee. And then over time, in fact, I think I was mixing with coffee and Red Bull. And I was having like
you challenge it because but it's filling yourself up with a story, right? So that was caffeine, that you needed caffeine, and that's the only thing that's going to bring you up.
Yeah, but then eventually I didn't see any doctor, I didn't see anyone. I just changed the story from, I don't really need it. I'm going to drink more water, I'm going to get more rest, I'm going to do what I have to do. And I didn't take no medication, I didn't take no pill, whatever. It just vanished. And it's now more controlled.
Right, now I'm sure when you have a cup of coffee, you enjoy it.
Yes, it's not
and
like
that's,
out of...
By knowing what you can enjoy, what you like, there's a power in that.
Yeah.
And it really goes to deciding what you need versus what you want. Again, understanding those two words are completely different. You know, what I want, right? I want $1 million, 100%. Do I need $1 million? No. Because what are you going to do? That's why a lot of people lose, right? They win the lotto and then they run out of money. Well, you said you needed $1 million. Great. Now you got it and you didn't use it properly. So it's all about what we do and how we focus. Money isn't the solve, as you know. Money isn't the solve for everything, right? There's a lot of people who have a lot of money, a lot of these executives that we talk to, lots of money, crazy money, who aren't happy. And then there's people who have nothing, who are the happiest in the world. Part of that is the story we tell ourselves, and part of that is what do we think we want versus what do we need?
What kind of content do you specialize in? And I would say, how do you find your audience when it comes to content creation? And this question is mainly to help people who are like, who wants to step into the world of content creation, especially like when it comes to what you do, writing. One of the things that I've heard is it's almost like, especially in this digital age, it's one of the most difficult form of content creation to be a writer, because it's almost like before you can make anything financially out of being a writer, it's really tough compared to other forms of content creation. So what's the journey like for you? And how do you find your community?
Well, journey is tough, right? No matter what, there's also another saying, if it was easy, everybody would do it. And right, and so content creating is the easiest thing that we can do right now, right? You have ChatGPT and all those Claude and whatever you got, each one, right? What is it, Copilot from Microsoft, and it's easy. You just type it in and it'll create content. Now, I go back to your authenticity. Why should I purchase stuff that you got from ChatGPT? If I want to work with you, I want you to know who I am. If you like me or you don't like me, that's who I am. And that's okay. I'm not for everybody. But creating content is why you do that. I mean, that's why, I can show you, and that's when we talked about before, about all of the books that I wrote. Why did you do those stories? They're passionate about, there's certain things why I did it. Like my first book, like this is the first book I ever published.
When your heart says it's your time to soar.
Yeah, so that's sort of my philosophy in terms of what I do and why it was my first book. It was poems I had written. One of the first chapters is about a girlfriend who I had who got killed by a drunk driver. But we have to remember about the love that we had. And part of the stories that I tell are Phoenix-related stories. That's why that book started that way, with that image of that Phoenix rising out of our ashes. How we can find the right path, right? I broke down in that book different stages of my life, right? The beginning parts of our stage, that first love that we have. And we should always have that love in our heart. That doesn't mean for that person. Love is unconditional. If you really love unconditionally, right? I don't know if you have children. Do you think you love your children? No, that's a question. That answer, right? That's it's an answer. Your parents. If we came to your parents and said,
I don't have any kids yet, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, not the. Okay. Great. But when you hold your kids, so the same thing when I held my first that book, different feeling, right? When I held my daughter for the first time, what a special feeling. Similar feeling, just differently. Like my book, you want to trash my book? That's great. You want to trash my daughter? Now we got some talking to do.
When it comes to, let's talk about your podcast. Your podcast has one of the most unique names I've ever heard. And I really love the name. It shows what you're trying to put out there into the world. And at what point did you come up with that name and say, okay, this is what I really want to put out there. This is what I want to communicate with people out there. Like, what made you make that final decision? Because that's one of the biggest, especially if you want to be like a long-time content creator, I've come to realize that just finding the name matters a lot. And that name will almost become your brand, becomes what people
it's part of your brand, right? It's part of who you are. Again, that purpose that we talked about. So peace, love, and bring a bat. It was all created after my suicide attempt. I needed to get the voice. I was told I have to tell stories, and I was looking for guests that needed to tell stories about being in the ashes, the Phoenix moments in our lives. How do you rise out of that? And I'm sure that while we might have similar definitions, peace and love, we might have different definitions of what love that is and what peace is for you. Peace might be jumping out of an airplane for you. You like that feeling, and for me, that might not be the feeling I want. So peace and love, we all have a commonality of what it feels like, but not necessarily how we do it. And then to bring a bat, you might have noticed I have a little bit of an accent. I'm a little bit a New Yorker, and I wanted to play around with that a little bit. I love baseball. The podcast is not about sports. though I've had sport figures on the show. And it really is about knowing our boundaries. So the bat is about bringing awesome thoughts. So I look for guests that have awesome stories of resilience, because not that I know all the answers. I want to hear how you got through your life and what you had to overcome to become the leader and expert that you are. That's what the bat's about. It's about also being authentic today. I always say, you don't think about authenticity, you are authenticity, how you're showing up. And then, I walk around with a bat. Because I teach people, so I use that as a program. It turned into one of my premier programs where I teach people about the right balance. I don't know, have you ever played baseball at some point in your life?
No.
Okay, but
Just
when you do hit a baseball,
I play ping pong.
okay, well, even like ping pong. So if you're too far out, the ball's going to go to the side, right? And depending on how you hold the paddle. So there's a lot of things. Same thing with a bat. The bat is a tool. It's not a weapon. So it's not about violence. So again, when you talk about content creating, when I first heard that story, when I came up with the title, you ask some friends. Some of my friends were like, oh, don't use that. They're going to think it's about violence or sports or this and that. And I was like, nah, I trusted myself. I was like, nah, they're not. And then I have, on part of my logo, it shows Uncle Dave. And which is, there's a story behind that of why it's Uncle Dave. But then I said, no, I want them. And I'm sorry for those people who have experiences with their uncles or aunts that were unpleasant. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who gets this stuff done. I'm the guy, my nieces love me to death. They might think I'm a little silly and weird, guilty as charged, but I'm not that uncle that you wouldn't want to be around. Or hopefully I'm not. That's the thing. So the Uncle Dave part, I was a recovery coach for a while. I help people through substance disease. And when I did that, we used to go up to Albany here in New York every February 2nd to talk to our politicians about the horrors of substance disease, how it's affected our communities, and what we needed to do. And I was there during one of the talks, walked in there, it's a room full of people, including the state senator, and the mothers are telling story after story about losing a child. And I never understood that. Thankfully, I've not been in that, and I hope to never be in that chair. But I also saw in that room, because I had that corporate experience, that guy was tuning out. He was hearing the story, being polite, but that's not why we were there. We weren't there just to tell a story. We were there for the impact. Again, a point of impact. And I said, we need to stop this right now. He's leaving in 5 minutes, and we need your money. And we still need their money. So even today, even though that was many years ago, we need the right funding. We need the right stories. And it was an Uncle Dave moment. It was one of those moments where I knew what had to happen. And I told the woman, I will listen to your story afterwards, but we need to make sure what comes out of this is funding, not another story. And I did. I listened to her story afterwards, and then she would tease me anytime she saw me afterwards. You promised anytime I want to hear the story. I go, let's go grab a cup of tea, and that's what I like. And I would hear her story, several times. And it's really what we do and how we show up. That's true leadership. And we did get some of the funding. I wasn't the only voice, and the funding was done by a lot more people than me. But at that meeting, I didn't want to waste that opportunity. So again, while I might have asked that question or said something that was still respectfully, again, when you asked before about how do people manage those things, yeah, if you're still respectfully, I didn't go, please shut up, I was like, hey, and we walked out of there, that's when I got the nickname. You're like everybody's uncle. You have that person, I don't know about anybody in your family, but you have that one person, I'm sure, in your life. I can't tell mom and dad what's going on. You're like, that might end in a different way, but I can go to an Uncle Dave and how do we figure this out? That's what I do. That's one of my secret powers, is to be that person. I don't know how to figure everything out.
That's a very good character in the movie.
Yep.
Do you have any writers that actually inspired you to become like a writer, or you just started
I've had friends. I had a great uncle who was an author, and anytime I talked to him, I never thought I'd be on his level, and I'm not. He's a premier, world-renowned author. Well, when he was alive, I guess he's still premier, but I thought the bar was so high that I couldn't attain it, and now I'm pushing myself. I'm trying to get better at writing. I'm not. While I have other stories, I'm trying to get better at being descriptive, being narrative, taking you on a journey that you're like, okay, I don't want to waste anybody's time, right? That's why I tell people, you don't want to read my podcast, you don't want to listen to the podcast, you don't want to do that, that's okay. All we need to do is find one person. There's a famous saying that says, if you help one person in the world, you save the world. Each one of those books, I hope, helps at least one person, or it just made your day a little easier. You might be able, you had a rough day at work, or the commute is horrible, and you read a book like that, right? We eat Oreos, we eat things that aren't good for us. This is something that could be good for you. It might inspire you to do something in yourself. Most people that I meet say, oh, I have a book inside of me. I just don't know how to do it, or I can't do that. And I'm like, let me teach you how you can do it for yourself. Because that's really what my mission is to not only say I did it. I'm not here to say you only can follow me. There's a million people out there who have the same strengths and skills, and some of them are better than I am. I just know what I can know. And we talked about it earlier about feeling it. That's what it is. It's that moment when I see that spark go off, boom. That's my sweet spot when I talk about the bat. When you hit a baseball, sort of like the ping pong, when you know you hit it right, there's nothing else you could do. It might not be the results that you needed, but you did the best that you could do. That's what I want everybody to have, is hit their sweet spot when they swing and knock it out of the park.
Beautiful, beautiful said. This is a very good place to close it, but before we close, I want you to just think about this. Imagine this is like your last interview, and you are in front of millions of audience. What's the one thing that you will want people to remember you for?
That I won more than I lost, and that that was authentic. So again, the teal suits, this is not an accident that I'm wearing teal. And I have full teal suits. I have a whole bunch of different things. Even I have a teal bat back there. That's what it is be authentic. Be who you are, because I don't regret. I might regret that things didn't work out at certain parts of my life, or I've made mistakes. I don't regret that I didn't get to spend the time with you today, and thank you for that. I didn't waste my time.
Thank you,
I was here 100% present, 100% authentic. I'm not going to go home in the car ride home and be like, I should have said that. I should have done that. I know every question. I was fully present. Those are the two things I want everybody to think about. Be fully present where you are, whatever you're doing, like those fish guys in Seattle, but also be authentic. Be who you are, because that's what the bat is about, not violence. It's about being authentic today.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please, David Chametzky, thank you for coming on the
Thank you,
platform.
sir.